Enough! Risking our lives for a little girl who's gone! Enough! Living next to a bar full of things that are trying to kill us! Enough! Rick, it ain't like it was before! Now, if y'all want to live, if you want to survive, you gotta fight for it! I'm talking about fight right here! Right now!
You should keep your gates closed.
Why?
Because it's all about survival now.
What's going on, Walking Dead family, my fellow Rishoners and shippers alike? It's your girl Lynn here with the first video of a new series, The Walking Dead Character Analysis. Before we get started, do me a favor and smash that like button and hit the notification bell so you'll be alerted every time I drop new content. Now that we have the housekeeping out of the way, let's dig into the subject of this video, the rise of Savage Rick. If you ask any Walking Dead fan what was their favorite era of Rick Grimes, most will undoubtedly say Savage Rick. But why is this? Is it because he became so badass and merciless when it came to opposition? Was it the apocalypse that formed the man he became? Some would say it was when he was forced to kill Shane. Others will claim it was when the governor attacked for the second time. And still another group might say it was when the claimers threatened Carl and Michonne. These could all be true, but I would like to throw another theory out there. I actually believe that this transformation started before the world fell. In a sheriff's vehicle during a conversation between Rick and Shane in the pilot episode Days Gone By, we hear Rick confiding in his friend about the trouble in his marriage. He says that everything he says to Lori just seems to be wrong and makes her angry, and that very morning, she had said, "Sometimes I even wonder if you care about us at all." This was the moment that I find most significant in Rick's journey, the first domino in a succession, if you will, that was felt even into the spin-off series of The Ones Who Live.
Do something.
I am doing something! I'm keeping this group together, alive!
As fans, we all know that his devotion to the people he calls family, blood or not, is what drives him. But what sometimes escapes realization is how doubting his devotion not only at times shatters him, but in several circumstances enrages him.
Don't know shit anymore.
You can do it.
It's my call, man.
I don't think you can keep them safe.
I think it was Maya Angelou who said it best. People will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. I believe that part of him was always what we call savage, and given the correct and consistent stimuli, that part would be fully awakened. I see it this way. Picture a group of ingredients that you gather together for a hearty stew. You turn on the stove, drop the ingredients into the water, you let it boil, then simmer until it has the right flavor. Then you serve it up. Lori gathered the ingredients with harsh words and doubting his love. In the third episode of season 1, Tell It to the Frogs, Rick informs Lori that he is going back to Atlanta for Merle, whom he had handcuffed on a roof. Now, he had just found them the day before and he was leaving again, and she wasted no time in telling him how she felt. And we get an example of the disdain that she held for Rick before everything happened with the outbreak. The biggest issue is she doesn't understand the man she's married to. In her mind, she and Carl should be the only thing he cares to protect. Shane echoes Lori's thoughts on the matter, stating that it is foolish and reckless to go back for someone like Merle, and to hell with his family and everyone at the camp. We all know, after watching 9 seasons of The Walking Dead with Rick Grimes, and even in the spin-off series The Ones Who Live, Rick Grimes does not leave people behind. It's not in his DNA. It's not something that he can do. And we see this a time and time again.
We have to go. I can't. He was just shooting at us. He's a kid. Please help me. This place is crawling with walkers. Can't leave him.
I thought we were just gonna get in and get the hell out of here.
I'm not leaving him on the street.
Look, I know you said he helped you.
He saved my life. Daryl and Carol are gonna be back. We're not going anywhere without him.
You don't leave people behind.
And like I said, and sometimes it's almost to his own detriment that he does this. But that's who he is, and he can't change that part of himself. Later in this scene, Rick also tells Laurie that he owes a debt to the man who saved him, which we know as Morgan, and he had to go back for the walkie so he could warn him about Atlanta. Laurie and Shane both try to understand, but it's clear that they don't. Carl is the only one who seemed to get where his dad was coming from and had complete faith in him.
You know, I bet they'll be just fine.
I'm not worried. Are you?
Yeah, a little.
Don't be.
Why?
Think about him, Mom. Everything that's happened to him so far. Nothing's killed him yet.
We also get to see how in sync Laurie seems to be with Shane, which is something that is referenced in the second season, episode 9, Triggerfinger. Her infidelity that may have not been acted upon until after Rick's supposed death, but was certainly present before the outbreak.
But we had... It was real.
It was
It was a
not.
long time coming. It was real, Lord.
It was not.
It was the one good thing. You know it's true.
Laurie tells Rick in episode 3, Save the Last One, that it might be better for Carl if he didn't make it. Her reasoning was that so he wouldn't have to be in a world as it was at that moment. You know, walkers everywhere, people dying, and they can't control any of it, just like you couldn't control it before the outbreak. So we can say that she said that out of pain and fear, but when you hear your spouse, or when Rick hears his spouse saying something like that, it's just like one gut punch after another with her and with his supposed best friend. And Rick, being who he is, just trying to find the best in those who wrong him, has always been one of his greatest strengths, and in my opinion, one of his greatest weaknesses. Shane was someone he loved, someone whom he called brother, and he fought to save that attachment, which moves us into the next, step in this meal we're cooking up. So Shane is the one who turned on the stove. Now, some may disagree, but I have never seen Shane as your typical villain. He existed in shades of gray. He had a heart to do what was right, or what he thought was right, not necessarily for himself, but for the ones he believed he loved. This is what I think Rick saw in him. We got to know Shane a little better in season 2, which would be his last season in the Walking Dead universe. In the episode Bloodletting, I believe that was episode 2, after Carl is shot by Otis, we see Rick tearing himself up over allowing Carl to come with him and Shane in the woods to look for Sophia. And he says that he has to go and he has to tell Laurie because she's his mother and she needs to know. Shane immediately tells him, your place is with Carl, and if you try to leave, I'll break your legs. See, that's again Shane, in his mind, doing what he thinks he needs to do to keep everyone safe, or namely Rick, Laurie, Carl. Those are his 3 main concerns. And sometimes, it didn't seem like he cared about Rick, but at this point, I think he's still caring about Rick and trying to make Rick see, hey, you need to focus on your own, on your blood and your wife. So Rick, lets him know, you're right. So he's going to stay there. He's going to help with Carl. And Carl needed blood, so he's going to give blood while Maggie went off and found Laurie. Now, in Shane's mind, there was no time for Rick to waste time blaming himself. And he told him what happened after Laurie thought he was dead.
When you were in that hospital, the one you were never supposed to leave, man. You should have seen Laurie. Just like the strength of that woman. Man, you can't imagine it. See, that's what you gotta have now. I mean, Carl, he needs that from you. So you are yourself tied, my friend.
So it's decided that Shane and Otis will go to the nearby high school that was the site of a FEMA station and get the necessary items to operate on Carl. And Carl, that poor kid, he's slowly dying from his wounds, and he needs, what's at this FEMA site. So Otis and Shane are going to go get it. And we all know what happened. Shane was injured, and Otis came back to save him. And even after being told by Shane to leave him there, Otis still refused to leave Shane behind. And the look on Shane's face told us what we needed to know. He didn't believe anyone around him knew how to do what was necessary to survive. And he says later to Rick, he shouldn't have been here. Talking about Otis. Otis shouldn't have been there because Otis didn't have what it took to survive. I mean, he came back for Shane, and even though it helped Shane wasn't really grateful for that. He thought it was stupid. So he shoots Otis, leaves him for dead so that Carl can get what he needed to live. And we see him later in the bathroom wrestling with himself and staring his image down in the mirror. In a moment of disillusionment, he cuts off his hair, which is something that a lot of people do when dealing with hard emotions. I've known people who have done that. I just going through a lot, and the next time I see them, they've just cut off their hair for no apparent reason other than they were stressed or just dealing with hard emotions. So if he had any, regret over what he did, I mean, who knows if he had killed someone before that, but he had a hard time with it, but it didn't last because in his mind, I did what I had to do. Carl's alive, so it was for the greater good. And at this point, we also see small moments of Shane doubting Rick and telling him he isn't protecting his family like he should. And he's not necessarily saying it flat out like that yet. He's just saying, you need to do this or you need to do that. This needs to be your focus, not this. So things come to a head when Lori admits to Rick that she was with Shane. And to Lori's surprise, Rick says, I know. Of course I know. And he tries to give her the benefit of the doubt, giving her an out by saying, you thought I was dead. That was it, right? And I think Lori knew that wasn't the entire reason she ran into Shane's arms. Like I said before, there was something maybe emotional going on between them before the fall, because it was too easy for her to run into Shane's arms. There may have been some looks that were passed between them, maybe some private conversations, or she felt she could lean on him in the past. So moving forward, Rick tells Shane about Lori's pregnancy. And I think this fans a fire of resentment in Shane, because now not only was Rick risking his wife and his son, he was risking Shane's child as well. And Shane goes to Lori. He tries to talk to her, but she shuts him down and says even if the child was his, it would never be his. And she pits him against Rick and later tells Rick, Shane is dangerous. So in episode 10 of the second season, episode's called 18 Miles Out, Rick and Shane, they take the prisoner that Rick rescued, and they were going to release him 18 miles out from the farm because they were under the impression that he was a stranger. He didn't know where the farm was, and so they were just going to let him live, let him go. But the kid, in an effort to save his life and beg them not to leave him, he blurts out that he knows Maggie. So, that stops everything. Shane and Rick turn around, and Shane is going to kill him, but Rick stops him. And even though earlier in the episode, Rick says that he would do whatever it took to save Carl, and he would have done maybe the same thing Shane did to Otis, but here it just proves that he is not that person. He is not someone who can just gun another person down just because it's going to save someone he loves or even himself. So, of course, another argument ensues. And Shane says, I don't think you have what it takes to keep them safe. And it's like he forgot what Rick told him earlier in this episode regarding, how he truly felt about the situation between him and Lori.
You and Lori. I get what happened. When I figured it out, and I figured it out pretty quickly, I wanted to break your jaw. Let you choke on your teeth. But I didn't. That wasn't weakness. It took everything.
A fight ensues. Shane gets trapped on a bus because he, in his anger, hurled a wrench and broke a glass window, which let a bunch of walkers out. So him and Rick are running in different directions. Shane gets trapped on a bus. Rick ends up getting back with Randall, and Randall's telling him, okay, let's go, let's get out of here, while they're distracted. And Rick still, even after everything, he will not leave Shane. Even though this man just told him once again, like, you can't take care of your family. He's questioning every decision that Rick makes. He won't leave him. And even Randall says, why? Like, this guy just tried to smash your head in. Why are you doing this? So nobody, it's like nobody gets Rick at all. And so Rick basically comes up with a plan that we find out in later on, in a couple of scenes, while Shane's is on the bus and he sees Randall and Rick leave in the car, and he's thinking, okay, I'm done for, this is it. But heroically, Rick comes back. He has Randall driving, and he's clearing a path for Shane to jump out that bus and get in the car. And when Shane gets in the car, he's in the back seat, and the look he gives Rick is just like, what the hell did you come back for me for? Like, why did you just do this? Like, and again, it's not even a thankful attitude that he has. It's the same look that he gave to Otis. Like, are you out of your freaking mind? You don't know how to survive. You don't come back for people like me. People who just tried to kill you. People who wouldn't care or would leave you behind. So he doesn't understand who Rick is, and it just boggles even my mind just sitting here talking about it. But this would be the last chance that, you know, Rick would give him. Shortly after, they've stopped and they put Randall back in the trunk, and he tells Shane, like, look, this is my wife, this is my son, that's my baby. Like, if you're gonna be with us, you have to accept that. You got to follow my lead. All right. And he gives Shane his gun back. He gives the man who just tried to probably kill him a gun, and he's trying so hard to keep what he feels at bay for Shane. Like, he still has that hope for him, but inside you could tell, like he said, it's taken everything in him to hold his peace. So later on, you know, they decide, the group, with the exception of Del and Andrea, you know, to kill Randall, because they feel safer with him dead, because he might get back to his people, and those people could come back and try to harm them. And Laurie says, you know, I don't feel safe if he's just walking around, you know, even if he's not tied up. And they know they can't tie him up forever, so they're going to kill him. So Rick, Daryl, and Shane take the kid out to the barn, and Rick has the gun to the kid's head, and he's like, you know, any last words? And the kid's just begging and pleading for his life. And in the middle of this is Rick's hesitation. You could tell he doesn't really want to do this because it's not truly who he is. And I think he's brought back to the moment when he hears his son, Carl, who has appeared in the doorway, and he's telling Rick, do it, Dad. Do it. Do it, Dad. Like, can you imagine having your young kid tell you to kill someone? Like, and it goes, well, really forward, because actually that same thing happened later on, a couple of seasons later, when Carl kills that boy who was unarmed. He was giving up, and he killed him in cold blood. So Rick at that moment sees, and he, I think, remembers what Del told him earlier in that episode or the episode before. Is this who you want your son, you know, to see? Is this the example you want to set? So Rick tells Daryl, you know, tie him up or take him back. And they decide later on, or Rick decides, that they're going to do the original plan, him and Daryl, and they're going to take Randall further out and let him go. And of course, this does not sit right with Shane. And Shane takes the matters into his own hands. While everyone else is busy, he goes, he gets Randall, takes him out into the woods, and talking to the kid like, you know, it's going to be okay, you know. And at the kid's most vulnerable moment, he snaps his neck and leaves him there. He hits himself in the head and comes back to the group and lies and says, you know, he escaped, he attacked me. And now him and Rick are out looking. Daryl and Glenn, they team up and they go looking. And, you know, of course, we all know that Daryl and Glenn find Randall next snap and they realize that he hasn't been bitten. And Rick, like I said, he's not stupid. He's more aware than Shane ever gave him credit for. He knew exactly who Lori was. He knew exactly who Shane was. And he knew that Shane was going to try to kill him. But he also knew, and he says it later, I know you. You can't do this. You can't live with it. And Shane had every chance in the world, especially after Rick holstered his gun, to shoot Rick and kill him. But again, here we go back to that gray area. Shane, he could do the horrible things that he needed to do to help the people he cared about live. But Rick, despite everything, was still one of those people that he cared about. And he had reservations. You could tell he's hesitating about killing Rick. He had no hesitation in shooting Otis. He had no hesitation in killing Randall. But when it comes to Rick, he can't bring himself to do it. He gets close, but he can't pull the trigger. And it wasn't the first time he had a gun on Rick and he could have killed him. He also had a gun on Rick in the woods and he put it down, and Dell witnessed that event. So Rick, he allows Rick to get so close to him, and Rick is handing over his gun. And as he takes the gun, who knows if Shane really would have killed Rick. But Rick knew at that moment it was him or Shane. And he did what he had to do. And he stabbed Shane, which I think the stabbing was more personal because of what was said later in the next episode. After they had found each other and the farm had burned down, Rick admits to Lori that he killed Shane. And inside, he kept letting Shane push him because he truly wanted Shane dead. Because he was trying to be a good person. He was trying to be, you know, the guy who kept giving chances, the guy who believed that there was some good in everyone. But he couldn't get that good part of Shane to come out. So he did what he had to do. So later on at the campsite, everyone is still reeling from what Rick had told them earlier that day. Everyone is infected, and no matter how you die, you turn, which is what Jenner told him at the CDC. And just because he kept this information to himself for so long until it was confirmed after he killed Shane, because Shane almost immediately turned. We know everyone has a different turn time. It took Shane probably less than 5 minutes to turn. So he let them know what would happen. And instead of them being grateful to this man, you know, who had this information, gave it to them, so now they can prepare if something happens down the road. They know to immediately, once someone dies, you have to, you know, stab them in the head or injure the brain. And they're all sitting around having these separate conversations about leaving and Rick not being trustworthy and not being a man of honor, which Daryl immediately shuts down. And Carol, he tells her, you know, Rick is a man of honor. He's done right by me. And we all know Daryl has always been a ride or die, almost from the beginning. Almost. We know they had a little tiff in the beginning, but almost the beginning, he's been a ride or die, just like Michonne for Rick. And Carol, you know, once they all hear something moving around in the woods, everyone's jumping up, grabbing their guns, and Rick has to calm them once again. Like, you guys, you're not going anywhere. This group is going to stick together, and I didn't ask for this.
Maybe you people are better off without me. Go ahead. I say there's a place for us, but maybe it's just another pipe dream. Maybe I'm fooling myself again. Well, why don't you go and find out yourself? Send me a postcard. Go on, there's the door. You can do better. Let's see how far you get. No takers? Fine. But get one thing straight. You're staying. This isn't a democracy anymore.
And, you know, heavy is the head that wears the crown. And it reminds me of what Okafor said in The Ones Who Live, episode 1. Rick tells him, I don't want power. And Okafor says, well, you already got it. I mean, it's nothing Rick can do. Just like not leaving anyone behind is in his DNA, he is a natural born leader. And we also see this crazy look that Rick did not have in season 1. And we saw it sprinkled throughout season 2. Every time maybe Shane or Lori would come at him, he had this look in his eye. And now at this campsite, it is on full blast. Like he has had enough. So this is where I think the Savage is starting, to creep up. And he tells them, this is how it's going to be. And he lays down the law. He actually ends up doing what Shane wanted. He takes charge. He tells everyone how it's going to be. And if they don't like it, that's too freaking bad. There's the door.